Good evening and welcome to our West Hempstead Candidate Forum. My name is Tanya Poyser. I will be a moderator for tonight's forum, as well as Sonia Dixon, who will be our timekeeper. We would like to thank the PTA for choosing Nassau Region PTA to conduct their candidate forum. I just want to go over kind of the standing rules or order so everyone knows. Okay, so before I do that, let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. So our candidate forum. All right, so our candidate forum will consist of 3 minutes for opening statements, 2 minutes response for each candidate, and 3 minutes for closing statements. We will go in a rotating order. So the individual who begins with the opening statement first will be the last to go, and the second person will be the first to get the question, and so on. And for closing statements, we will go in reverse order. Now we have handed index cards, so that is the form of communication that we will use. However, these are all the index cards I've gathered today. That's all? That's it. So that means that I'm going to do my best to get through as many questions as I can. I have grouped them as best as I can as well. As we go through, if you need an index card, please feel free. But I do need, just raise your hand. But like I said, I will do my best to get through as many as possible. Okay. All right, so I first will introduce the candidates. I will do my best with the last name, just so you know, in case I get wrong. Whether they say chocolate to the heart or not the head. All right, so I have Mr. I have David Lazar, and then I have Barry Leon, and then I have Joseph Magaraci. All right, that's a home run right there. And Tom Sargent. All right, there you go. There you go. All right, so let me make sure I have my order correct here. As well as, at this time, I'd like to declare that I have no conflict of interest. Candidates, do you have any questions regarding the order, before we begin? All right, let's begin. So, Mr. Lazar, would you like to begin with your
Hi, I'm David Lazar. I'm a 23-year resident of West Hempstead. My child has graduated with a West Hempstead diploma and is currently in the School of Visual Arts with a scholarship. And everyone can read my bio, so I don't have to go through everything on here. But basically, I was inspired about a year ago to run and get more involved with the board. I was at some of the budget meetings, re-vote meetings and stuff like that, and I got very concerned when there was discussions about how the increase in the budget was only equivalent to a few pairs of shoes. And knowing that the community has a lot of students, about 30% I believe of the students in the school are getting a lunch program through the state and through the government, it just concerned me a little bit that it's only 3 pairs of shoes as opposed to we need to do these changes because we need the services for the community. So I started getting more involved with looking into stuff on the budget and seeing areas where if we make certain changes to how we negotiate certain contracts and how we deal with certain things, that we can probably save significant money for the district and utilize that money for additional services for people in the community. Speaking to many community members, feeling that There are children that maybe are special needs, maybe are not getting all the services that they need because the community can't afford it, and find more ways of being able to increase that. I myself, being dyslexic, so I understand what it's like to go through life having a disability and go through school. I found that when I was 16 that I was dyslexic. So I'm hoping that helping the community, helping the school, helping with the budget, and helping make sure that we're thinking more about how to maximize the value of every tax dollar that's given without taxing the community anything that's not necessary. That's one of the areas that are important to me, and it's because I'm not an expert educator. I never tried to be, I never tend to be. What I've always done in my career, and that's in leadership, executive level, chief operations officer, is it's people, and it's understanding budgets, and it's understanding solving problems that are difficult to solve. So what I spend time doing is finding ways to solve certain problems that we have in the community, and it's also making sure to talk to people, listen to people, hear what people have to say, and make sure to utilize their ideas in helping the community get better. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll have Mr. Leon that will give his opening statement.
Hi, my name is Barry Leon. I'm coming to this juncture of wanting to be on the school board because I finally got to a stage in my life when I have the time to try to do it. I come from a family of a wife who's an educator. She retired from the Roslyn School District, a daughter who's an educator, a mother-in-law who was a special ed teacher. I started my career as a school psychologist in the mid-1970s and worked for a year in a city hospital and then 2 years in a clinic in the Bronx doing educational and psychological testing on children. At the time, New York City went into budget default. Almost everybody here is probably too young to remember New York City going into bankruptcy. Yes. But they didn't have jobs for school psychologists, so I pivoted and became an accountant, taught accounting at City University, became a partner at a firm, and had a lot of nonprofit organization clients, including a half a dozen schools, daycare centers, societies for the prevention of cruelty to children, and others where I met regularly with lots of boards of directors who were typically wonderful people who were donating their time at no remuneration to themselves. And I promised myself that I would like to do that when I would be able to do that. Between my education background and my background as a CPA, I believe that I can offer both elements that bring a better education to all the normal kids in the district, to the special ed kids in the district, as well as bring something to the budget which deals in several different areas which I have not seen addressed in the past by the administration or the incumbent board. So it is my goal to keep the education standards high, actually to raise them, and at the same time also keep some lid on waste and mismanagement, not mismanagement, but waste and bad budgeting. Anyway, I want to cut short before my 3 minutes are completely up, so thank you for listening.
Before I go to Mr. Magaraci, I think it was said when you walked in, but the Hempstead PTA or
West
there will be
Hempstead.
recording, West Hempstead PTA will be recording. So I just wanted,
It's not the PTA.
oh, it's not the PTA. So there will be recording happening, it's not the PTA?
No.
But there was a question, so I want to make sure I address that. So if there are objections, then we need to make sure that's dealt with as well. Okay? Because there was a question that came up. Go right ahead, sir. Sorry.
Good evening. First, I would like to thank the PTA, PTSA, and SEPTE for putting together this forum this evening. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Joseph Magaraci, and I am running for re-election to the West Hempstead School Board. I am a lifelong resident of West Hempstead. I am a graduate of West Hempstead High School, as is my wife and our 3 children. All of my children have graduated college and have or are pursuing their master's degrees. My eldest son is a New York City special education teacher. My daughter is a clinical psychologist. My youngest son is a New York City physical education teacher. I am a proud member of the West Hempstead Lions Club. I am the vice president of the West Hempstead Football Parents Club, where you can find me every Saturday during the football season running the food shack at our football field. In 2004, I started the West Hempstead Broncos youth football program. I have coached youth soccer, football, baseball for the last 25 years. To say I am invested in the well-being of our youth, of this community, is an understatement. I have heard from my opponent what a good accountant he is and how his platform is centered around financial issues and how he will be able to fix our budget. But I have not heard him say anything about what he is going to do for our children. While being fiscally responsible is an important factor, it is not the only factor. Giving the children the best education possible so they can succeed in the world once they graduate high school should be more than a small side note. It shouldn't be all about cutting taxes. We have a terrific central administration that creates the budget. They take into account all factors that affect West Hempstead, from the students to the buildings to the residents. We utilize an internal and external auditor who review all aspects of the district's budget. In addition, our board members are residents of this town also, and they are affected by the budget, just as every other taxpayer is. Our budget is sound, and our kids are flourishing. Why would we want to take anything from the students when they deserve the best opportunities West Hempstead can offer them? Please, let's not forget the big picture, educating the children and giving them every chance to succeed. That is our main goal. Let's not forget the children are our future, and it is up to us to make sure that they are ready for that if all is going to be thrown at them. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Tom Sargent, and I'm running for a trustee position on the West Hempstead Board of Ed. I've been a resident of West Hempstead for 26 years. I live here with my wife Jennifer and with our 3 children. Aiden is a senior, Eric is a freshman, and Irina is an 8th grader at the Robert Williams Bosey School in Jericho. Professionally, I spent 40 years as an air traffic controller and training specialist at New York Center and JFK, retiring in July of 2022. I'm a charter member of the National Air Traffic Controllers Association, NATCA, and one of the authors of the Critical Incident Stress Program, which is still used today for those involved in aviation incidents. I taught a little over 5 years as an adjunct professor at Vaughan College of Aeronautics. My bachelor's degree is in management from St. John's University. My master's degree is in counseling from Long Island University CW Post campus. I believe my district experience is quite extensive. I've served as a class parent and assistant class parent, as well as on the PTA executive board. I have served on the site-based teams at the middle school, the high school, and now at the secondary school. I've been a part of the district's strategic planning committee and the bond committee. I currently serve on the district counseling advisory committee and recently served on the interview panels for the secondary school principal and assistant principal positions. I think it's fair to say that my continued participation in various roles gives me a good sense as to the pulse of this school district. And this district is in excellent shape for so many reasons that I hope to get to share with you this evening. But my opponent would have you believe otherwise. When it comes to discussions about finances and budget, you will hear him use words such as waste, fraud, fiscal irresponsibility. Look at the Facebook page of some of the people he aligns himself with, and you will see budgetary info and statistics that are skewed and just not true. and their information does not have to be true because they are not accountable to anyone. What they are trying to do is sow doubt in your mind, so when you hear him start talking budget and finances tonight, keep that in mind. Who is accountable and required to provide accurate, true, and correct information? That would be the Assistant Superintendent for Business, Joel Press, and his office. That office is accountable to at least 3 bodies. First, their boss, the superintendent. Second, the state of New York, which obviously requires them to file a budget that is fair, accurate, and correct. And third, they are accountable to every person living in this school district. Thank you for coming tonight, and I ask that you sit back and listen carefully.
Thank you all so much. We will begin with our first question, and our first question goes to Mr. Leon, and you all will have 2 minutes to respond. How will you improve communication between the educators and the Board of Education?
I believe that communication needs to improve not only between the administration and the Board of Education, but with the whole community at large, with the teachers and also with the parents, and for that matter with the students. And I'm a big believer in the last 20 years in something we call the internet as a way of pushing it forward and getting information out to people. It's not so much a difficulty in doing it, it's practically free, but it needs somebody to push to make it happen. And I believe it hasn't happened yet.
Now it's my turn.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next, we will go to Mr. Magaraci. How will you improve communication between educators and the Board of Education?
Communication between the educators and the Board of Education is crucial. The Board of Education has to realize exactly what's going on in our schools. And the people who are there every day are the teachers. Okay? And we have to make sure that they come back to our superintendent with any things that they may learn that may have to get done or they want done just to improve the education of our children. Mr. Leon was talking about the internet. There's a Facebook page that I've been on for a year now that I've been trying to get information out to the public. Okay, and he says how important it is. Yet, for the last year, I would post things on this web page, and they would sit in queue for weeks. So, if somebody's going to moderate a Facebook page, they have to get the information out. I would post meetings, I would post community events, I would post anything, and they would sit in the queue until I went to somebody in the community, and then they had to go back to the administrator, and then they would come out, then they would finally be posted after the event. So, the internet, yes, it is great, but having communication between the teachers, the administrators, and the Board of Education, that's what's most important.
Mr. Sargent, how will you improve communication between the educators and the Board of Education?
This is a great question, whoever put this in. And it goes way past just the educators and the Board of Ed. First of all, for 40 years, I was a charter member of a union. And for the last 10 years of my career, I wore a tie as a training specialist. And I've explained to people, I have had managers not talk to me because I was a union member. I've had union members not talk to me because I wore a tie. And it's important for those people to get together. And if there was something pertinent and critical in this district that needed to be discussed between the Board of Ed and the educators, the 2 primary things that need to happen. The parties need to come together and be willing to listen. That's the first thing. And the second thing, when those parties come together and be willing to listen, everybody sitting on each side of that table has to be willing to say that somebody on the other side of the table might have a good idea. But it's not just the educators and the Board of Ed, because that needs to occur between this community and the Board of Ed. And I know that people who are on the board now would love to see a room like this every month, but we don't. So what I would love to see happen is during the course of a day, when there's a Board of Ed members who are available during the daytime, I'd love to have the Board of Ed take the board to the students during the course of the day. And let's meet with the students of this district, and let the students know what's going on and what the board is supposed to do. And how about we ask the students what they think of their West Hempstead experience? And maybe, just maybe, those students are gonna go home and tell mom and dad, and that next board meeting, mom and dad are gonna be filling this room. That's what I'd like to see. Thank you.
How will you improve communication between educators and the Board of Education?
So, school system, like any business, has a different has a hierarchy. So you have the superintendent who's, in some ways, also servant leadership to the staff, to all the faculty, to the teachers. And I think it's important that he himself goes to the teachers and asks them what ideas they have, and what they have on their mind, and what can help the students, because obviously the teachers, first of all, care about the students, and second of all, they know exactly what's going on in the classrooms. They're in every classroom, every day, with every single student. The superintendent has its limitations. He's one person, there's lots of students, he can know certain things. So he should be going out to them. But on top of that, if he is not doing that, the teachers should have the ability to go to the board also and give their thoughts to the board and say, you know what, we're not getting heard, we're not getting listened to. Please listen to what we have to say. Maybe tell the superintendent what we are hearing from us. Obviously, as a board, being the boss of the superintendent, we don't want to tell him exactly how to do his job because we can't hold him accountable for it. But we should create a situation where we can hold him accountable for the actual results that are happening and give him as much help and insight of who's asking questions. And as my opponent has said, the community is very important for them to also be involved, not just the faculty. And now, how do you get the community involved? Part of it is when they come to a board meeting, that they actually get to ask questions prior to things being voted on already. The budget was voted on, and then they asked questions for the budget. Why is that happening? That's why people don't come to the meetings. Everyone talks to me, there's no point for me to come to a board meeting. I get to hear them say, dockets 1 through 15, who says yay and who says nay. There's no dialogue, really. That needs to happen, that needs to change. We need to make sure that people feel that they can be heard, and if they can be heard, they're going to be successful, and so will the community. Thank you.
Our second question will start with Mr. Magaraci. If elected,
No, my turn.
re-elected, what can we see you change with the arts and music programs with our high school?
Arts and music is one of the hottest topics now in our school. We are now in the process of, we just redid our whole auditorium. Our band just played up in the New York State Capitol. And we just have culinary classes that we're starting. It's the new and hot topic for everybody to what's going on in the schools. And as a board, we are pushing through more and more ideas of what more we can do every year to enhance that program.
Thank you. Mr. Sargent, if elected, what can we see you change with the arts and music program?
There are some things that the Board of Ed doesn't have to change with that, because I've been watching the music program since both of my sons entered this building in 6th grade. And in the 7 years that they have been here, the music program has taken off with Dan DePasquale and Ben Coleman. They've done an incredible job. But what are some other things that have gone on? We had 6 all-county Nassau Art Exhibition finalists. We had an all-county scholarship recipient for the arts. We have NISMA All-State Award winners. The high school band, first time ever, received a gold at NISMA, and the middle school band got silver for the first time. These are successful programs that we have here already. And I would love, if we're going to try to expand on something, I would love to have the directors for the arts department and the music department come in and tell the board what it is they want to do to take that program to the next level and what they think the Board of Ed needs to provide for them. What tools can we provide in order for them to take these kids to that level? Because let me tell you something, these kids are already up there right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Lazar. If elected, what can we see you change with the arts and music programs with our high school?
Right, so arts and music, it's an interesting area. For starters, I'm familiar with it because my child is very much into art, and that's what they want to do as their career. Some of the things that's important is every student should have the ability, if they want to, do parts of art programs, whether they are career level or if it's just junior level and they just want to be and try it out and stuff like that. But I think that it might be useful and helpful for the school to take advantage of the services within the district and that we have access to, even if it's outside of the actual buildings. BOCES has a great program, Lisa, for people that might have it as their career opportunity. Give all the students the opportunities to be as successful as possible in their career. And the students that they're not really geared towards career, give them the opportunities to try it out, see what they like at the school level, because we do have plenty of great programs within the school. Let them try out those things, see what they like. Maybe they'll decide they want to do it for their career. Maybe they'll just do it as a side thing. But at the end of the day, we should be giving our students every opportunity that is financially possible for them to be able to excel and be able to be productive members of society and be able to come back to the community and say, look, this is what the school has done for me. This is what
Mr. Leon, if elected, what can we see you change with the arts and music programs with our high school?
My wife, who just retired a couple of years ago from a district to the north of us, talked about how important arts and music are to the, not just to the mind of our students, but to the soul of our students. And it is truly something that children need. I have a personal thing that I'd like to add to it because it's a particular interest and passion of mine. And and many people might think it's silly, but I think we should expand whatever dance it might be available. I don't know what it would take to get into dance, but dance, whether we're talking about ballroom, folk, other kinds of dancing, is something that I think is something that might make sense as an adjunct. It's music and exercise simultaneously. I got 1 minute left. I believe that it's an important thing, and I don't think it's a budget issue of any sort. So I believe that there are many other things that can be changed related to the budget.
Thank you so much. Our third question will begin with Mr. Sargent. With the benefit of hindsight, what would you have done differently about the bond?
With the benefit of hindsight, well, with the bond not being successful initially, that brings me right to maybe we needed to communicate a little bit better. And I think the communication did improve because we did have a successful bond vote there. And I think one of the things that could have been, one of the things that the community, I think, could have taken more advantage of had they wanted to, was the opportunity to come and tour the buildings, which I know the superintendent did, and the assistant superintendent did on various occasions. I did one of those tours, so that I could see what was going to be upgraded, what needed to be changed, have everything pointed out very clearly and visual to me. And maybe had we done a better communication of those opportunities, everything would have been successful more appropriately right from the start.
Mr. Lazar, with the benefit of hindsight, what would you have done differently about the bond?
So, one of the reasons why a bond would fail in a community is because people don't feel comfortable and confident with what the bond's being spent on. And part of that is connects to the rest of the budget. People don't necessarily feel confident in the numbers in the budget, they don't feel confident in the information that they see in the budget. And I think if it was made more clear and people better understood what's going on in the budget, what's being spent on in the budget, they'll be more comfortable with spending money in other areas also. But if there's a question in one area, it just leaks to another area. So a bond becomes, we have a budget, plus we have additional money, we want that on top of it. And then people are like, we're not comfortable with that. Come back to us when you have more information, when it's more clear and we're more comfortable. And then we'll be happy to sign off on it, which is why they eventually signed off.
Mr. Leon, with the benefit of hindsight, what would you have done differently about the bond?
A bond is essentially a borrowing. Shakespeare in Hamlet had Polonius say to his son Laertes, "Neither a borrower nor a lender be, for loan oft loses both itself and friend, and dulls the edge of husbandry." Mostly what the bond is doing extra expenditure and then paying interest on top of that. At a household level, you wouldn't necessarily do that. You have to think very long and clearly about whether or not it makes sense to borrow money for something and whether or not that something is well thought out.
All right. Our question, next will go to you, Mr.
You can ask
No,
me-
no.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Magaraci, I apologize, that's the right answer. Let me read it, I want to make sure I give you full answer. With the benefit of hindsight, what would you have done differently about the bond?
Well, I would pass the first one. Our schools were neglected for a long time before any of us that are on the board right now were involved. It went years and years of the schools not being taken care of. And the schools needed updating severely, and they still need more. Our schools are extremely old. They have to be, if you look now, we have a beautiful media center upstairs. We just redid the whole athletic field. We changed our boilers. We changed everything. But we could have done more, okay? It would have costed us a little bit more. We tried to explain everything, what could have been done with the extra money that we wanted from the start. But it didn't pass, so we did the best we could. Okay, so hopefully down the road we'll be able to fix more of the things that needed to be done. But I think the bond work that we've done came out excellent, and I just wish we could have done a little bit more for the community.
Our next question, this will go to coming out of the pandemic, having so many students dealing with social and emotional issues, do you believe the district holds a responsibility to provide resources for those children?
So there's definitely a level of that requirement that by the district. And mainly it's going to be, from starters, is children cannot learn properly when they're having those kinds of issues. And so in order to help the children learn properly and better acclimate to education again, the school definitely has to be involved. It's not just a parent thing. It's as a whole community, the school system, and everything else. So understanding the needs of the different students, and lots of students have issues in lots of different ways. So definitely the mental health requirements for that should be a top need and a top issue. If that is resolved properly, the education will be much better that next year and the year after. If it's not, we're just prolonging the pandemic in the minds of the children, making them miss more and more years of education because of this. So it's definitely important for the school kid.
Thank you. Mr. Leon, coming out of the pandemic, having so many students dealing with social and emotional issues, do you believe the district holds a responsibility to provide resources for those children?
I have a two-word answer, of course, but to expand on that, I think everybody's learned that we're never going to do again what they did in this last pandemic. They're not going to shut everything down because they found out that it was medically useless. And of course, it hurt education, it hurt children's psychology, it hurt all sorts of problems. It caused all sorts of problems. And I hope from having learned that, we're never going to do it again. To the degree that some kids have extra issues related to it, of course, the school district should do everything it can to aid them in dealing with that.
I'm sure this is one topic that we're all going to agree on. Yes, the school district has to help every child. Coming out of the pandemic, children's social activities, I mean, they were just stuck in a house. And coming out, they just didn't have the idea of, like they were caved in. They were stuck in their house. They didn't come out and they didn't deal with people, social activity. So it's important that the psychologists and everybody, if they see a child struggling, sit down, talk to them, see exactly what's going on. Could be something at home, could be something, it could be just something as silly as, you know, I've been tucked away and I don't know who my friends are anymore. You know, so the school definitely has a huge part in everybody coming out of COVID, and they should do whatever they can to help the children of this community.
Thank you.
Not just kids in the public school, but everywhere.
Thank you. Mr. Sargent, coming out of the pandemic, having so many students dealing with social and emotional issues, do you believe the district holds a responsibility to provide resources for those children?
I believe the relationship that exists right now between the West Hempstead District and Northwell Health is a good start. I think the next step is for the mental health professionals in each of our buildings, as well as the administrators at both the school and the district level, be further trained in issues such as, but not limited to, assisting students with various forms of trauma, crisis intervention training, and effective understanding and techniques for communicating with neurodivergent students, such as someone with an ASD diagnosis. It's common knowledge that we're seeing increases across the board in mental health issues from all members and ages of the education community, especially since the pandemic. And assisting those who ultimately have to make the decisions on how to deal with unique circumstances and issues pertaining to the students we serve should be paramount. We need to give the school principals and the district administrators better tools. In some instances, a referral to Northwell may be appropriate. In others, a more hands-on, in-school approach may be best. We need to ensure that there is no confusion between a mental health or a trauma crisis and a behavioral issue. And the Northwell relationship should not be seen as a one-size-fits-all solution for problems that may be able to be handled in a more proactive manner at the school level. I know at the beginning of this school year, the BOCES program at the Robert Williams School in Jericho instituted trauma training for much of its staff, and my understanding is that the trauma-based training, is going to be included here in West Hempstead for the upcoming school year. That training should not stop at the counselor, principal, administration level, and plans should be made to include those on the front line, the teachers and other staff, to give them better tools for dealing with the most vulnerable students among us. Thank you.
Our next question will start with Mr. Leon. Why is the cost per pupil not remaining steady while enrollment drops? What can we do to make sure it does?
The cost per pupil in West Hempstead is an interesting thing that we need to compare with other districts. Now, we have a special challenge in West Hempstead because demographically, we've lost student population. We lost student population when our contract with Island Park ended, and we lost students to some degree because of the aging of the population of the people in West Hempstead, and we've lost students to some degree in the public schools because the more religious community is that both Catholic and Jewish are sending kids to parochial schools. And that, of course, is both a bad thing in terms of the size of the school population, but it's also a good thing in that it's, to some degree, with less children costing the school district less money, and it should be. But we are not keeping the cost per child proportionate to the student population. It can't exactly, because plant and equipment stays the same, and administration stays the same, but there should be some goal to make it approximate what it should be in proportion to the students. And perhaps that can be done with a little bit of planning.
A little bit of what? What was the last sentence?
Mr. Magaraci.
Cost per student is a difficult thing in West Hempstead. We have a lot of non-public school kids and public school kids. That cost both goes into it. You can't just take the number of kids that go to public school, divide it by the budget, and tell you, okay, that's the cost per kid. You have to, there's a whole formula that you have to use, how much goes towards the out of public school kids to the in public school kids. Yeah, there's approximately 18% of our budget that goes to out of public school children. Okay, so that number's got to be taken out, and then you can figure out a more accurate number of what the cost is per child. But you can't, every thing is going to go up every year. The cost of medical insurance, the cost of teacher salaries, all of these things have to do adding to the cost in the budget. So all of these things are going to raise, and yes, the cost per student is going to go up every year. Okay, we try to keep it as low as possible. Believe me, we go over the contract, we go over everything to make sure that we put out a budget that is as fiscally as possible, and as little as we try to do the tax cap as low as we possibly can. And that's all you have to do.
Mr. Sargent, why is the cost per pupil not remaining steady while enrollment drops? What can we do to make sure it does?
I'd mention yes, that the cost per student is probably a figure that changes probably every day, might even change every hour. A simple answer, in 2015, when Island Park residents voted to send their students to the next town over, instead of sending them to West Hempstead, you lost several hundred students. Boom, right away, the cost per student still here stayed the same. We have about 40% of the students in this community, the school-age children in this community, do not attend the public schools. It costs, and Joe was just about spot on with this when he said it's 18.2% of our budget is what it costs for sending out of the public schools for kids that don't come here. But even at home, the cost per day changes. I mean, inflation is up at 5% right now. Last week before, National Grid let everybody know they're going to raise their taxes 16%. The fuel in this building doubled in 1 year to heat this building. And you have to heat this building whether you have one kid in the room or you have 101 kids in the room. And so it's a very dynamic number. And it's one that you really can't pinpoint, but there are a lot of factors that do affect it, and I think several people touched on that. Thank you.
Mr. Lazar, why is the cost per pupil not remaining steady while enrollment drops? What can you do to make sure it does?
So, as we heard, the current budget, about 18%, let's say 20% is used for out-of-district, which means from the current $74.5 million that they're budgeting for this year, approximately $15 million of that, or rather $60 million left, is used for within the building. So from that perspective, if you have 1,600 students, and next year you have fewer students, that number is going to go up more significantly than just looking at inflation alone. We've heard from the assistant superintendent during board meetings that a good portion of that reason is we have old buildings, we have a bunch of buildings, and we have administration a back-end administration that costs whether or not you have more students or less students. A lot of that remains the same. So I wouldn't say that we need to go after that, but just looking around and what I call waste, not fraud. I never said anything about fraud, but waste. That there's places that we're taxing that doesn't need to be taxed. Some stuff is very simple. We taxed for unemployment $75,000 this year. Over the past 7 years, we've used less than 50 as a net cost, but we've taxed over 500,000. So the question is, where else in our budget can we find places to save on this waste? Either say, let's bring it back to the students with more services in areas that the students need it, or reduce the cost to taxpayers. Not take away a single service, but find where we have stuff that we're spending, that we're taxing on, that we don't need to tax on because it doesn't help anyone. It's just bad negotiation that we maybe could do better if we find smarter ways to do it. Thank you.
Mr. Magaraci, our next question number 6 goes to how do you feel being re-elected on the school board will improve the district?
Well, my care for the children, as you heard in my opening statement, is my life. The children of this town mean everything to me. I want to make sure that they are ready for what is ahead of them. This world is changing very fast, and they need to be ready. Will they be? I don't know. I hope that we can get them the education that they need. If I'm re-elected, I will make sure that all of the numbers are always where they have to be, that we put out a fiscally responsible budget. Yes, it's gonna be very hard to, you can't put out a zero budget. It's a very difficult thing to do. We put it out at 1.99. Right before we did 1.99, it was at 2.545. That morning, Joel Presky had got some news that we were able to take the money and put it into the budget, okay? And we were able to bring it down that day, the day of the final vote on the budget, to 1.99. These are things that we go after and we look at and we go over every single meeting to make sure that we put out a financially, fiscally budget to this community as low as we possibly can.
Thank you. Mr. Sargent, how do you feel being on the school board will improve the district?
I think the better way to word that is to turn that around, because I think the district is going to improve me. Because all you need to do is look at these students that we have right now. They're amazing, and they are soaring. And in the last 10 years, this district has gone from an 83% graduation rate to a 96% graduation rate in this district. Now we have 5 universal pre-K classes for students in the whole community. We have 25 sealed and biliteracy students and 1 student who's a triliteracy recipient, and 7 of those people were ELL learners. We have 30 seniors right now, and we're expecting that number to go up to 60 who are earning the seal of civic readiness. Now, this district secured an $800,000 a year for 5-year 21st Century Community Learning Grant from Adelphi University. It's going to be used for things like AIS. It's going to be used for adult education. It's going to help with summer programs. You should see the list of AP classes and grades that these kids are getting that exceed the state average. So I don't know that I'm going to make these kids better, because every single day these kids make me better and they make this community better, and that's what we need to all keep in mind. Thank you very much.
How do you feel being on the school board will improve the district?
I listened to lots of my opponents, and it's great, and I'm very proud of the school district. We have lots of very intelligent students there. My biggest concern is the other side, the ones that are not succeeding. The ones that need other services they're not getting, or that they're told from the district that there isn't the funds for it, even if their IEP suggests that they should have some services. I think what I'm trying to do is find creative ways to take the current money that we get in the budget and utilize it smarter, negotiate better, make sure that if we are doing whatever tax amount that we're going to do, that we maximize every dollar that we're using so that every student will have the best opportunities. Now, we all talk about taxes in the community. I will be very proud of this community and this school if I know that almost every student that graduates from here could move back here when they have kids and afford the taxes at that time. I want to make sure that the taxes don't increase to a point where people can't afford it, and therefore it starts triggering in the opposite direction, taking away services from the students because there just isn't the funding, because people just don't have the money for it. So we need to start now by not reducing a single service, but reducing every penny that we should not be spending in the wrong place or negotiating wrongly because one bus company decided to bid on our contract, and we were okay with that. Even though it's such a large part of our budget, we should say we need to find more opportunities, more options for busing for our children so they can get their services without having to pay these crazy prices.
Mr. Leon, how do you feel being on the school board will improve the district?
I'm going to use this question to address something that Mr. Magaraci mentioned before. It's not only budget, but the school district has to do better for its students. A very, very smart teacher told me very recently the ELA exams that are given throughout the years in elementary school are showing dismal numbers. I was flabbergasted to find out that for the disabled students who take the ELA exams, did anybody guess the percentage that passed? Zero. It's an untenable thing happening. Among our normal population that isn't disabled, we have a 50-50 rate, which is pretty low in New York State, and we are a somewhat upwardly mobile community. So the statistics are a very interesting thing that Mr. Sargent says everything is wonderful and we have a better graduation rate. That is true. Will Rogers said there are white lies, damn lies, and statistics. And statistics show that we're failing in some ways in delivering reading to our students in elementary school, especially the disabled group. So I want to pay special attention to that.
Thank you. Okay, so this will be a couple more questions, and then we will do our Mr. Sargent, what are some of the district's accomplishments you are most proud of?
I'm going to take the opportunity to speak about an accomplishment in one specific area that this district can hold its head high. And I'm going to focus on Mrs. Pospisil's class at Chestnut Street for this answer. 10 years ago was the first time that these students were kept in this district. 10 years ago. Prior to that, they were sent elsewhere. And over the last 10 years, I have been in that classroom of Mrs. Pospisil's dozens of times. Come down to Chestnut Street 1:30 tomorrow, you'll see me there reading to those kids, because that's when I have my next session. These are our most vulnerable and at times most marginalized students. And as we've seen in the studies after COVID, more attention and expanded training is needed in this special ed area to ensure the ability of these most vulnerable students to feel safe and secure at school. We should look at providing the necessary services and any education and equipment they need. I know for the coming year, the district has procured several AAC, and that's augmentative and alternative communication devices for use by the non-verbal students entering the district in the universal pre-K. I got to see firsthand how this equipment works in Mrs. Pospisil's class with one of her students, and what a change it was for that kid to be able to communicate. I deal with PPS and special ed services regularly for my daughter, who's a student at the Robert Williams Bosey schools. I know I've heard the phrase during the last couple of weeks, we had to fight for services. There's no fighting. There's only dialogue and discussion. That goes on with me. My wife and I have educated ourselves on what is available and what is required. And we have discussions with my daughter's school personnel and the PBS director here as peers.
Get those last
Mr. Lazar, what are some of the district's accomplishments you are most proud of?
Well, one of them that I'm very proud of is that district 96% graduation rate. I think that's very good. I don't know if it could be perfect, but I think that's a very good thing. Hearing about all the awards, we were at the last board meeting, so were lots of students and lots of teachers and lots of people getting awards, getting tenure. I think it's very great that we have teachers that care about the community so much, care about the students so much, and that every year we see more and more teachers are getting tenure. That I think is a very big accomplishment for the community and for the school, and that's where I'm very proud, because that means that we have teachers that are constantly here trying harder and harder to help educate our children.
Thank you very much. Mr. Leon, what are some of the district's accomplishments you are most proud of?
I do want to agree with everybody that the graduation rate, that the awards, that the people who are taking away special art awards, special music awards, bands doing well, these are all phenomenal things. I ultimately, if I get on the board, want to focus on fixing what's wrong and not necessarily just be a booster related to the school district. I want to try to make it better. But I appreciate the question.
Thank you. Mr. Magaraci, what are some of the district's accomplishments you are most proud of?
The list could go on for quite a while, but let me just give you a couple of highlights here. The graduation rate has gone in the last 6-7 years from 83% to 96%. That is absolutely amazing. Okay, we've had 12, this year we had 12 scholar athlete teams. We have 13 students who participated in the New York State Envision Scholar Program. We have one student who was ranked 3rd in the nation, in the triple jump. We have 30 and growing seniors earning Seal of Civic Readiness. Our school band played at the state capitol this year. The cheerleading squad competed once again for the national championships in Florida. One of the greatest accomplishments, and it just blows my mind, is we have 2 twin sisters, Victoria and Gloria, who were selected valedictorian and salutatorian. Plus, both were ranked nationally as track stars, and both of them are committed to go to Yale. Okay. Also, for the 4th consecutive year, we received the School of Excellence from the New York State Public School High School Association. That's just a couple of the things that have done that I am extremely proud of the school.
And the football team.
Mr. Lazar, transparency in the budgeting process is missing. How would you fix this?
Okay, so for starters, I think that it's important to see more details inside the budget. I've read through the budget the past few years. Every line item still very difficult to see. I've asked for foils for certain information so I can get better glimpse of what's going on. So I think it's important that some of these things, some of these items, especially big budget items, shouldn't require a foil and should actually be out there for people to see what it looks like, so that they can see the details and they don't see an $8 million budget with really little to know and understand of what's in that item. I think that's a very big part of it, because people are asking questions all the time of why is this costing so much, what can we do about this, how can we change this? And without that information, and taking sometimes 6 weeks to get information that you're requesting, it makes it impossible to deal with it during the budgeting time. and trying to bring up certain things. So it's important to have this stuff easily accessible to people, much more visible and much more detail oriented, so people know exactly what they're doing.
Mr. Leon, transparency in the budgeting process is missing. How would you fix this?
This is a very interesting question. Financial statements is something that I've been preparing for almost a half a century now. One of the things that could change in how a budget is presented is it could be, instead of giving as many separate line items across the 30-odd pages that it is doing something called segment reporting, showing the whole thing as it is, but also showing how much of it is in the Washington school, how much is in the Cornwall school, how much is in the middle school, the secondary school. We call it a secondary school now. It used to be 2 schools, now it's 1 school. But so segment reporting and breaking it up into what we're paying for elementary compared to secondary, breaking it up in departments for how much we're paying for plant and equipment compared to administration, compared to teaching staff, is an interesting other way to present the same information that would make it much, much more clear to everybody how we're showing what is being spent in our district.
Absolutely. Transparency in the budgeting process is missing. How would you fix this?
Well, first of all, I don't feel it's missing, okay? Our school budget is online, line for line. Anybody at any time can go up to Mr. Prep, the business office, our superintendent, anybody, and we will sit down and talk to you about any item you have a question with. This offer is, we have offered several times, Mr. Lazar has shown up a couple of times, but he's about the only one who has sat down with Mr. Press to go over line by line or ask any questions. We've had budget hearing meetings for the last month and a half. You come into this room and you go online and you have, out of a community of thousands, 25, 30 people. How can anybody learn about the budget if you're not listening? How can we know what questions you have if you're not going to come and ask? We will tell anybody and anything. Our books are open to the public. They can come in, they can sit down, they can read line by line. We'll meet them anywhere, we'll go anywhere to show them exactly what is it. Everybody can know anything they want to know about this budget.
Thank you. Mr. Sargent, transparency in the budgeting process is missing. How would you fix this?
A gentleman named C.S. Lewis. He's a British author and scholar. He's best known for writing the Tales of Narnia. He made a quote one day, and he said, "One of the most cowardly things ordinary people do is shut their eyes to the facts." Transparency is not missing, because it's very simple. The budget is a little over $74 million. It's a little under $3 million increase. It's a 1.99% tax levy, which is below the 2.43 tax cap. This is the 12th year in a row that this district is below or at the tax cap. And we are lower than 75% of the districts on Long Island. There are areas in the budget that we can't control, and many people don't recognize that. We cannot control the medical insurance premiums that are going up 12%. We cannot control the increases in special ed tuition. We cannot control the facilities costs, especially due to the utilities. Oil doubled. We cannot control the transportation costs. That's dictated by New York State, and it's going up 5.5%. And out-of-district costs are over 18%. We have auditors come in. We had the comptroller's office came in. Finances were okay. Now they're looking at technologies because finances were okay. An external audit, clear audit, no fraud, no waste, no mismanagement. Internal audit. This year they looked at purchasing and accounts payable as well as risk assessment. No issues. A claims auditor has to review every check before it goes out to make sure it's justified. What did my opponent say at the board meeting last week? Maybe you need to hire another auditor so we can get somebody who finds something wrong. That's what he said.
Wow, he did.
That's what he said. There's no problem with transparency. The problem is people don't want to go in and see Joel Press and get the correct answers, because then they couldn't sow seeds of doubt in your mind. Thank you very much.
The next question would go to you, Mr. Leon. Building positive relationships is important to the community. How will you address this with such groups like the Teachers Union?
I'm going to take a moment to talk about transparency again, because I would wager.
It's not the question. It's not the question.
But I would wager that my,
It's not the question. And that's not how you do it. It's not a debate. It's not a debate.
So the question is, I think you can address it when you have your closing.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, but the question is, building positive relationship is important to the community. How will you address this with such groups like the Teachers Union?
The Teachers Union, like many other constituencies in our neighborhood, is another one that needs to be listened to more by the administration. The teachers are our first line in dealing with our students. So communication is paramount with the teachers as represented by their union. And it's my impression, and I could be wrong because I'm not on the board yet, but I believe the administration doesn't listen to the teachers as well as it should.
Thank you. Mr. Magaraci, building positive relationship is important to the community. How will you address this with such groups like the Teachers Union?
Teachers Union, our teachers are absolutely fantastic, and I have nothing but praise for everyone. We need to make sure that the teachers communicate with the administration communicates back to the board, okay? Maybe at some time we can get everybody together in a room and if there was any grievances, but from what we've heard so far, everything seems to be going smoothly, okay? Like I'm saying, I've dealt with the teachers, their union. I have nothing but praise for every teacher in this school district. The community, yes, communication with the community, that's something that has got to get better, okay? The community has to get more involved. The community, we come to a board meeting, 8 out of 10 board meetings, you'll have the administration, you'll have 1 or 2 people from there, and a couple of teachers. And that's about it. You'll have about 7 or 8 people online, okay? How can anybody know what's going on with our school district if nobody's there to listen? A school board meeting is where you go to learn what is going on with the school. The community has to come to the school board meetings, ask their questions, find out what's going on, so this way they can get more involved and give their opinions on what maybe we can change or what we can do.
Thank you. Mr. Sargent, building positive relationships is important to the community. How will you address this with such groups like the Teachers Union?
As I said in my opening, I'm a 40-year union member. I understand that labor and management naturally have this set up. It's natural. It's the dynamic of the relationship. But that doesn't mean that things can't be worked on, that groups can't collaborate. As I said earlier, I've had union people not talk to me because I put on a tie. I've had managers not talk to me because I'm a member of a union. Parties can come together and sit at a table if they're willing to listen and willing to look at that person across the table from them and say, you know what, you're right. The teachers are the second best resource we have in this district. No offense to the teachers, because I think the kids are the first. The kids are the first, the teachers are the second. And I know one of the bones of contention right now for the teachers is their professional development time. And I think looking at the 18 hours of professional development time that they have allotted to use after school is a good starting point to work towards collaboration on projects and programs that the teachers think are best. I also think with the community, we need to find better ways of communicating things such as this past Sunday's Art Day, which was just incredible out back here with the food and the art shows that we've had. The plays that we have had here are great, and if you want to just hear some incredible music, come to the upcoming concert and listen to the orchestra and listen to the band, because you don't get invited to the state capitol unless you're that good. And our band and orchestra are. Come see them. That's what I think we need to showcase more. And I do not mind being somebody who pushes this community. Thank you.
Mr. Lazar, building positive relationships is important to the community. How will you address this with such groups like the Teachers Union?
So obviously, teachers report to the superintendent, and that's an important way and manner for them to communicate. However, the Teachers Union, we have certain delegates from the teachers. They're sort of the next level of management, and I would be comfortable with having monthly meetings with them, either with the rest of the board or by myself if the rest of the board is not interested, to hear their ideas, hear their thoughts, so I can bring it to the board, bring it to the superintendent, and make sure that ideas are being heard and that the teachers feel that there's a table they can sit at, that they can communicate, because from what I've heard from some teachers, it may or may not be true, the superintendent doesn't believe it's true, but I've heard from some teachers that they do not get heard, and they do not have a place to sit at the table to have any of these dialogues. And as I brought up at a board meeting, I am more than happy to voice that opinion to people. I'm more than happy to hear and listen to people. Not only that, I'm willing to listen to anyone in the community that wants to get in touch with me. If people think that it makes sense to have meetings in the community to discuss certain topics, I'm more than happy to have it again with the rest of the board, or if people just want to give me information that they want to be brought to the board. But I understand that at board meetings, we don't have a lot of people, because one of the problems that I've had at these board meetings is that the board votes on docket numbers, not on policies or information for anyone to actually hear at those times. So whether or not there's a document somewhere else they could read, the board meetings are boring, and people don't feel that they can get any information out there. So if you want to be able to make the people are interested, they should hear what's going on, and they should be able to then participate, and I bet you'll get more people at board meetings. So that's how I would try to help bring the community and bring everyone together.
Our next question goes to you, Mr. Magaraci. How can we prepare our special education students for college?
Hard work. Hard work by our special education teachers. Our PPS teacher is absolutely wonderful. She sits down with each one of our special education children and goes over exactly what their needs are. She sits down with the parents, they work out a program that's benefit to the child, and they implement it. And we just have to keep on top of it, have to make sure that she does her job, make sure that the special education teachers do their job, okay? And if everybody's doing everything correctly, the child will move on.
Mr. Sargent. What can we do to keep kids in the district and not need to go to private school?
We changed the
Change
question.
I'm sorry. Jumping the gun here.
How dare you?
Building positive relationships is important to the community. How will you address this?
Special education. How do we get them to college?
I got my
Yes.
cards here. Okay, here we go. How can we prepare our special education students for college?
I think a good example might be in a community like this, which is so diverse. Quite often we have families move in where English is not the primary language. And if you have a case of an English language learner, they're most likely coming from a home where no one, maybe other than a sibling, speaks English. And this fact gets highlighted if in fact that student requires any sort of special ed services. And as such, I think one of the things that the district can look at is the possibility of providing an advocate that speaks the parent's language during any CSE meeting so that all can fully understand what their children are entitled to receive. That's part of the education that not just the child gets, it's part of the education that the parent gets as 1/3 of that team for that child. And the team is going to consist of the family, the parents. It's going to consist of, if they're in district here, the teaching team at the school, and it's also going to consist of the PPS director, Mrs. Karras. You know, my wife and I deal with her all the time for my daughter, who's in BOCES. We don't fight. We've gotten educated. We've learned what's required, what she's eligible to receive, and we dialogue, we collaborate, and we don't fight. And that prepares, in my case, my daughter, and hopefully the other students who fall into that category in this district, better to handle the classes that they need to deal with right now, and then we worry about the next year and the year after that, and we work progressively, and it's going to be a different progression for every single kid. Thank you.
Mr. Lazar, how can we prepare our special education students for college?
So for starters, I'm going to divert a little bit from that and say that when we are dealing with special education students, we need to think more than just college. So if you're just focusing on getting them into college, some of these kids, some of these students are not thinking about college. They're not thinking that that's the right place for them either. What we as a school need to help these kids to be successful when they're adults and help them along the path. So as early as we can, and although we can pivot over time, is try to work with the students and with the parents to understand the path that this child has. Maybe they're going to go to a CTE program one day. Maybe they're going to go to college. Maybe they're going to go to something else that for them is that success story that we want to hear. College is not the answer to everybody. We know these days it's not the answer to a lot of people. But the main thing is we want our children to be successful adults. And what that takes to happen is what we need to focus on throughout all the years and not say college is that end result, because that's going to be a big mistake for us. And so you have lots of different children that have lots of different needs. Some of them have needs that they can't learn properly. Some of them have needs that their executive functioning skills will affect them from being able to do things. So if we focus on each child and what will help them get them to the next level, that they will be more successful to be able to learn, to become a greater adult than they would have been otherwise, that's really where we need to focus on. And sometimes that means looking a little bit different and saying, we're not looking at what the normal is. We're looking at this child. How will he be successful? How can we make that happen for this child?
Thank you. Mr. Leon, how can we prepare our special education students for college?
Okay, just switching the focus of the question a little, David is right. We are not preparing every special education student for college. Many it's not appropriate for. Special education has different groups. It has learning disabled, it has emotionally disabled, it has different levels of intelligence quotients. But for those students who college would be beneficial to, the school district education, the goal of it is to try to make every child rise to their level of capacity. As I pointed out before, our reading levels, which is crucial to all education, are relatively dismal in our statistics, despite whatever rah-rah stuff I've heard about the district being perfect. Our reading levels are majorly deficient compared to many places. And yes, a lot of children would benefit from college. Many learning disabled and special ed kids might benefit from college, and we should try to let them rise to their level of their potential.
Thank you very much. we will begin with our closing statements from the candidates. So closing statements are 3 minutes long.
Wow, it's a long time.
So we will go in the reverse order as mentioned in our agreement. And so we will begin with Mr. Sargent.
Why do I want to serve on the Board of Ed? Because I am way past the time where I need another line on my resume. I want to serve for some very simple but incredibly important reasons. I want to serve so the kids can continue to build incredible sets for school plays and have outstanding performances. I want to serve so that our musicians can continue to perform in a band or an orchestra that gets invited to play at local colleges in the state capital. I want to serve so we continue to have incredible teams such as football and track, which provide not only the opportunity for sports, but for the chance for students to show that they can excel as scholar athletes, of which we have many. I want to serve so we can continue to have years like this with graduating seniors receiving merit scholarships from and attending places such as Yale, MIT, Boston University, Colgate, NYU, William & Mary, and in many cases becoming college sophomores in the middle of their freshman year because of the college and AP classes they took here. I want to serve so we can keep our special ed students in this district, giving them all the tools they need to get the education they deserve so that they are no longer viewed as vulnerable or marginalized. And I absolutely want to serve so that we can start all these great things in a universal pre-K, which some would have you believe is not fiscally viable for West Hempstead. My opponent and I have very different views on this school district, where I see growth by students, amazing dedication by teachers, and fiscal responsibility by having a budget within or below the tax cap for 12 years in a row. My opponent only envisions larger class sizes, mass layoffs for teachers, and unsubstantiated accusations of waste. Last week he used the mass layoffs term right before 10 teachers of our district received their tenure. The most important words you can hear tonight are those of my opponent, and I have them right here in a Newsday article from last year following the defeat of the first budget vote. My opponent says he voted no on the original budget as a protest. Even more telling are his other words suggesting at a board meeting that West Hempstead consider closing the school. He says, and I quote, "If we have less than 2,000 students, do we need all 5 buildings? Everything we have built up, he and those he aligns with want to tear down. Everyone in this district should be concerned with this rhetoric and needs to stand up for what we truly believe in. You can do that by telling your friends and neighbors to come out and vote next week. Vote yes on the budget, vote yes for Tom Sargent, vote yes for Joe Magaraci. I want to preserve this strong, diverse community. My opponent wants to see something else. I look forward to seeing all of you at the vote next Tuesday, and I can make you one promise. When you see me on Tuesday, I will be voting yes on that budget. Thank you for coming out tonight.
Next, Mr. Magaraci, your closing statement.
I would like to thank the community for electing me as a school board member for the last 6 years. It means the world to me to serve this community and its children. I am extremely proud of the work this board has done in providing each and every child the best possible education they deserve. We've done this while putting out to the community a fiscally responsible budget. One that's been at or below the tax cap every year that I've been a trustee. Our schools are in good shape right now, but we still need work to be done. We have come a long way over the last several years, raising our graduation rate from 83% to, as it stands now, with 96%. We have several new classes to offer our secondary school students so they can earn college credits. We now offer a pre-K program that is open to everybody. We have added new programs across grade levels to ensure our students they have the tools they need to be 21st century learners. Our schools are safer and more secure now than they've ever been. Keeping a focus on student safety has to remain a top priority, and it will be if I am re-elected to the board. I am proud of the things that I am proud of the things that have been accomplished in this district. And instead of focusing on all the students and professional accomplishment, I just hear about how we are not fiscally responsible. And that is just not true. Everything we do as a district puts the well-being of all our students first, and followed closely behind that is the responsibility we owe to the community at large. To say that we do not take the responsibility seriously is simply false. This district utilizes outside agencies to monitor our finances. Consistently, these outside agencies, consisting of auditors and state controllers, haven't found anything to criticize. That speaks volumes as to how fiscally responsible we really are. No matter what others would like you to believe, our superintendent's salary is ranked 110 out of 121 on all of Long Island. Our teachers' salaries are ranked at the bottom third in all of Nassau County. We do not spend the taxpayers' money without careful concern, and the claim to the contrary is just inflammatory. West Hempstead is a great small town that always pulls together when we need it to, and I am proud to call this my home. This school board is not perfect, but I would not trade any one of them. We all have our own areas of expertise, and that is what makes this board so special. We don't always agree on everything, but we talk out our disagreements, and most times come to a unanimous decision because we believe in doing the best we can for the whole community. In closing, all I can ask is that you make sure you have your facts correct and you vote with your heart. Thank you for coming out tonight, and I hope I have earned your support for the next 3 years.
Next, Mr. Leon, your closing statement, please.
Yes, I'd like to try to get everybody to begin to understand that there are problems in our school district that need addressing. We have a better graduation rate, we have honors kids, we have people going to Yale University, but we do have deficits in our education. We do have a fiscally untransparent situation, and I would wager serious money, if we get to later questions, that a 6-year member of the board couldn't tell us how much we spend per student in different schools in our district. And he's going through the budget each and every week before it's prepared. I believe that you need somebody who understands budgets and who can begin to try to deal with them. And I believe also that we need to do more for the students in certain areas, like our special ed curriculum, and get better results. I'm going to take less than my 3 minutes at this point because I don't have that much more to add to that.
Mr. Lazar, your closing statement.
Yes, hi. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. I was a volunteer firefighter in West Hempstead for 5 years. I did this because I cared about the community and every member in the community. So when people talk about people with great grades and how the school is doing great with that, I am very happy about that. I'm very proud of our community. I worry about the other side. I worry about people that can't afford. People sent me emails over the past 2 weeks talking about how they're having trouble affording not their mortgage because their taxes are more expensive than their mortgage. So just to understand those kind of things. The school budget has its limitations. There are plenty of different people that have been asking for services, for asking for other things. One of the board members asked for $20,000 to be added to the transportation budget, but no, it's not available. I get it. Things are expensive. But at the end of the day, we're talking here, my opponent likes to talk about the auditors. The auditors come in and audit our books. And if they felt that we were doing such a great job because their job was to actually see how great of a job we're doing on the different budget items, they would question, which someone decides to take out of context. I said at the last budget meeting, I said, why do we have over $500,000 in an unemployment reserve fund? Are we looking to fire all of our teachers? What do we need all that for? We budget $75,000 every year in that, which we tax the taxpayers, but we use less than 10 on almost every given year. So why are we doing that? If we're saying we're fiscally responsible and we talk about a rainy day fund, why are the 3 reserve funds that we actually have that could only be used for retirement and laying people off? Where are the reserve funds for the cost of repairing the building? That's $1.5 million to repair a roof. So if you want to bring up a question that I had asked last year of why do we need all of these buildings when we have buildings falling apart, the question is, maybe we do need all those buildings. But if we can't afford to keep the buildings up and running, maybe we need more bonds if people are willing to spend that money. But at the end of the day, we need to really understand what we need to do for the community, and we have to focus on, because we've done a great job focusing on the high school. Their grades look like it's great from the region side, but on the lower end, the lower school grades, have a lot that they can improve. And I know that teachers want to improve it, and they want the resources they need to be able to do that job. And I want to make sure by saving money in areas that we don't need to spend, we can spend it on the children that are either in the district, whether they have special needs or not, or, like I heard from my opponent, keep the kids in the district that has special needs. I understand that, as long as we have the services. But if we don't, BOCES offers lots of services, like my opponent's child is going to a BOCES school, for services that will help. And I think that it's important that we consider all options for our students and not just say everything has to happen in the building or else, because that's not the best option. Thank you.
In closing, I would like to thank all the candidates. On behalf of the Nassau Region PTA, I'd like to thank all the candidates for coming tonight, the community, as well as the PTA for putting on this event. Please go out and vote on May 16th. And I would also like to thank Sonia, our